Now remember when we created this storage account, we chose locally redundant storage for this case. And I said at the time that the definition of locally redundant storage is that Azure will keep 3 copies of your data in the same data center. The risk is when that data center was to go down or the region was to go down, which does happen, let's say once a year or some infrequent time, then you're not going to have access to your data. So let's go into the configuration setting. And we can see here that we can actually change the redundancy of our data. So if we upgrade from locally redundant storage to geo-redundant storage and click Save, what we're doing is we're getting Azure to replicate our data into another data center. Now, what it's doing, of course, is not only is it copying all the contents of this storage into 3 more places, but it's behind the scenes, of course, it's setting up that stuff in another geographical region. Now, as the pop-up said, it does take, go into here, it does take up to 30 seconds to take effect. That's pretty quick, actually. Back to the overview screen, and now we're into geo-redundant storage. So all of our existing files have now been replicated in an additional region. If I was to upload another one, then that would automatically be replicated. This is relatively new, which is the geo-replication settings within Azure. Now we can see here, since this is geo-redundant storage, that it is primarily in the Canada Central region, which we created, and it's now been replicated in the Canada East region. So these storage accounts and these regions, they basically have pairs. So Canada Central and Canada East are a pair. You'll also notice it is in Canada. And so our data is not actually leaving the geographic region. If you put your data in the United States, then your data will stay in the US. If you put your data in Europe, then this geo-redundant storage will choose another data center in Europe. These are called region pairs, and they have the fastest, highest-speed fiber optic cable connection between them, and generally they're in the same region. There are some exceptions, like there's only one data center, there's only one region in South America, in Brazil, and so their pair is in the United States, but that only works one way, okay? So the geo-redundant storage is set us up into 2. Now I'm going to pause this video. It's doing the synchronization. It tells me failover can be initialized. Replication is still in progress. I'm going to pause the video. When we come back, we're going to be able to set up an automatic failover between these 2 regions, or a manual failover. So that took about 10 or 15 minutes, and we are now got a situation where we've got our primary data center set up and the secondary data center, and I guess replication has occurred. You've got 3 copies of your files in Canada Central, 3 copies of your files in Canada East. Now, because this is geo-redundant storage and not the read access kind, we don't have access to the secondary account where there's no direct URL. If I go into the properties of this storage account, there's only one URL for the primary endpoint. If we had the read access version, we would have 2 of them. But let's just say Canada Central's down and we're like, no, we need to get these files. We can basically set up this failover. So we can basically force the primary to become Canada East. And so this is how we're going to use basically geo-replication to control how we're accessing these files, and especially in case of emergency. Now, I'm not going to go through the process of, starting the geo-replication, the failover process, and moving from primary being Canada Central to Canada East, but this is how we would do that if we needed to get in there and force a failover.